This is a Fletcher Free Library original program.
Hey everyone, this is Abby, the teen librarian from the Fletcher Free Library, and with me today I have Kerry Shackett, who's a career coach at Champlain College, and she's going to talk to everyone about resume writing today, which is such an important thing to know. So thanks for being here, Kerry.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. So as Abby introed, I am Kerry Shackett. I work at the Career Collaborative at Champlain College right up the hill in Burlington. And there I work with all of the creative students. So if you are interested in film, TV, writing, graphic design, any sort of communication, or just like making stuff, you are one of my students. And it is my job to make sure you have a job whenever you want to have a job. So Champlain is pretty unique in that way, and I'm happy to do a little pitch later if any of you have questions about what college is like or what going into a creative field might be like. I'm happy to answer those. But before we can talk about jobs, we got to talk about resumes, because how are you going to get one without having a good resume? So we're going to jump right into talking about resumes, and we have a chat. If you have questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll have all my contact info at the end, or I'm sure you can reach out to Abby and she can connect the two of us. So let me jump right into our presentation here. It will be pretty short and sweet for you, but if you have questions along the way, or an idea, or like, how do I put this into my resume, please feel free to ask me. That's kind of the fun part, is how do we cater a resume to work for each one of you? So as I said, my name is Kerry Shackett, Assistant Director at the Career Collaborative, and I work with the CCM division, so Division of Communication and Creative Media. If you're walking up Maple Street and you're at the corner of Maple and Willard, there's a big glass building, and that's where I live. That's my home of creative people. So we are going to talk about a resume from start to finish. Where do I start? That's often the hardest question to answer, because we might apply to a job, maybe it's our first job, maybe it's just a little volunteer opportunity, but they're requiring us to have some sort of resume. It can be really daunting. So here are some of the first little steps and to-dos, the basics. Let's just start at the very, very beginning. What is a resume? Oh, this is a heavy one. What is it? Why do we need one? Basically, a resume is what I call a sales document. So imagine you're applying to a job maybe on Church Street. You might have 25 other people who are applying for that position too. How are you going to stand out from those people? Well, with your resume. So it's a sales document selling that you are the best candidate for that position. You have a certain amount of space to show an employer that you have the skills needed for that job. Why do you need one? Well, you're not really going to get a job without one, especially as you get older and you learn more about what those future positions might look like. Even if you get a job through a friend or a colleague or a coworker, you're still going to need a resume when you get to the HR process. That's some adult stuff there, but it is really helpful to have one on hand so that if you apply to a job or a volunteer opportunity, or even some college applications require resumes, to make sure that you have one ready to go. How long should it be? Here's the kicker of a question. Well, a resume should be one page. You have one page to sell yourself. Think that you're in a class right now in high school, or maybe in middle school, and your professor or your teacher gives you a reading assignment. You have a 2-page reading assignment or a 1-page reading assignment. And then after that, you have 50 more 2-page reading assignments or 1-page reading assignments. You're going to probably pay more attention to the 1-page reading assignment than the 2. So where you are right now, 1 page is perfect. The rule is, for every 10 years you have been in the workforce, you are allowed to add another page. So you have plenty of time to live with that 1-page resume for now. So what do we put into a resume? Here are some of the logistics of a resume. These are the important, sometimes what I call my non-negotiables. Here's the sneaky part about resumes though. If you ask 10 people their opinion, maybe your aunt, maybe a guidance counselor, maybe a friend or a parent, They're going to tell you 10 different things. Everybody has their own opinion on resumes, and that's okay, because that's what makes resumes unique, and that's what makes resumes you. So just know everything that I'm about to say today is what employers, recruiters, and our alumni who have gotten jobs in the field tell me they look for in resumes. That's kind of what I'm building my presentation around. So whatever I say here is my opinion. By all means, you have creative freedom when it comes to your resume. But here are some non-negotiables. This page, I think, is going to be pretty common through anyone that you talk to. It needs to be organized and easy to read. No one wants to read a resume that is confusing, that's hard to follow. It needs to be neat and organized. 0 grammatical mistakes. 0. That doesn't mean 1, that doesn't mean 2, it means 0. Have a friend, a trusted adult, someone who's really good at writing, just take a peek at it and make sure that everything is spelled correctly. This will show an employer that you really mean business, that you've taken that extra step, and that you know how to proofread your work. Make sure your facts are real and truthful. There is no lying on a resume. There's no extending the truth on a resume. If you come to Champlain, I will tell you the story of when I lied on a resume and I got caught red-handed. It's a good one. Avoid the person. There are no I's, you's, he, she's, it's in a resume. It is completely personless. So when you're talking about yourself, you don't say, I am a student at Burlington High School. Instead, you would put an action statement, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But there are no people in a resume. It is completely personless. This can be really tricky, so I recommend when you go to that person who helps you proofread it, this is a great time to ask, hey, could you help me flip this sentence a little bit so that I take out the person? Watch out for emphasis. Sometimes when we are building something that's really organized and easy to read, it will force us to maybe bold something, and then bold italicize, and then bold italicize red, and then maybe we're gonna underline. That can get really chunky and really confusing. So what I recommend, pick 2. You may bold, you may italicize, or you may underline. You can pick 2 of the 3 and use that throughout your resume. Watch out for too many, it can get confusing. Color, on the other hand, is tricky. I would avoid color. Not many people are going to print your resume in color, and so it can be really off-putting if things turn a different shade of gray or black and are hard to read. So I would recommend stick with a nice black resume. And check your font. While fonts can be fun, they also can be really distracting. Believe it or not, I have received college-level resumes in Comic Sans. No joke, I have. The other funny part about fonts is if you choose a really fun font in Word, maybe this one down here, and you're like, yeah, that totally describes me. And then whoever opens up your resume, if you email it to them and they don't have the same version of Word, it's going to come out as wingdings, which is that little symbol text. So yes, your name might turn into like a mailbox, a smiley face, and a thumbs up, which doesn't help anyone. Keep to a really consistent, clean, and common font. That way, no matter who you send it to, whatever platform they open up the document on, it's going to have the same font. So those are my important non-negotiables. Pretty easy to follow. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty pieces. Should you ever use a Microsoft Office, Canva, or online template? I'm also going to throw in here a Google Docs template because Google Docs is really sneaky about trying to get you to use their templates. Should you ever use them? Here's my answer. No. Never, ever. Ever, ever. Ever, ever, ever. I need to say it again. Ever use a template. Thank you, Michael Scott. Here's the reason. They can be really fun, they can be really fancy, but they are really hard to edit. Once you put in all the information they're asking you for, it's probably not going to apply to where you are in your career. They're meant for people who are way in their mid-level career, not for people who are just entering the workforce. Also, for employers or people who do a lot of hiring, we know all of those templates. And so what it just told me is that you opened up Google Docs, clicked resume template, and plugged in a little bit of information that Google Docs prompted you to plug in. It doesn't show your creativity. It doesn't show your thought. It kind of makes you hard to edit. They're kind of ugly, and all recruiters know them. Now, when I use the word recruiter, a recruiter is the person who does the hiring for a company. So their job is really to look at resumes. What you can do is take inspiration. If you find a template that you really, really like, build it on your own in Word or Google Docs. All right, here's the fun part. So what the heck do you include on this resume? We know that it has to have a bunch of information about us. What are those pieces? Name and contact info. I have received resumes without someone's name on them. What good is that going to do? How am I going to get in contact with you if I don't have your name and contact info? So we'll talk about what that contact info should look like and what pieces you need to include. A summary statement, a professional statement, I think you should lean closer towards selected skills. This option right here. That's probably the best level that you are at right now. I have selected skills on my resume. You want to include your education, which can be selected classes, or professional projects that you've had. Maybe you did some community-based learning. Maybe you did something in a program after school. So I would really recommend that you think about some of these projects that you can include. Ooh, we have a great question that just came in about some of that contact info. Stay tuned because we're going to talk about what should go in that contact info. All right, let's see, your work experience. If you haven't had any work experience yet, that's okay. We're going to talk about what other things you can put in that section to kind of make up for some of those pieces. Think of volunteer experience. Even if it was required for school, if you have to get a certain number of hours, that is okay. You can absolutely put those in there. Leadership experience. Ooh, we're going to talk about this one. Have you been a captain of a club? Have you been a captain of a sports team? Have you ever been a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout or worked on a project where you were the leader? So we're going to talk about leadership experience. Published works. This can include school newspapers, blogs. If you've ever written something that was published, it can go in your resume. Awards, honors, certifications. Maybe you got on Dean's List. Maybe you were awarded a book award, or maybe you were awarded Student of the Month. Those can all go on your resume. Affiliations and clubs. What do you partake in when you're at school? What are you a part of? Think of all of those pieces of your life. Basically, they're going to fit into some category here. All right, here we go. Our contact info section. So we're going to start at the top of our resume and work our way down. Now, keep in mind, some of these contact info examples I've used here are a little more geared towards a college level, but you might also have some of them yourself. So the first thing that you're going to always include is your name, then a phone number, and always, always an email. The day of snail mail, which is like the regular post mail, is kind of over. So I would highly recommend you take off your street address. No street addresses on a resume. It's also really kind of creepy that you're sending someone who you don't really know all of the information about who you are, where you go to school, and what your front door looks like, because Google Maps is pretty powerful. So I recommend take street address off completely. No one needs to know where you live. They just need to know how to get in contact with you, which your email is fine. A school email or a personal email is okay. Either one works, whichever one you check the most. On that note, make sure you're checking your email if you are applying to jobs. You're also going to include a LinkedIn if you have one. If you don't, totally okay. Or if you have a Vimeo, if you have a YouTube channel, something that shows your skill set in a professional light, you can include that as well. If your contact information is just your name, your phone number, and your email, that's okay. What I would recommend is most of you are probably going to be applying to jobs locally. That means in Burlington. So I would recommend that you actually put Burlington, Vermont on your resume contact information so that people know that you live here. So yours might look more like this: Dwight Schrute, Mountain Summit, or Burlington, Vermont, your phone number, and your email. That is plenty of information for anyone who you are applying for a job to know. All right, and then we're going to talk about skills. So we have our contact information at the very top of the page. Now we move into our skills section. So I always call that top quarter of your resume your lakefront real estate. This is the most important, expensive, fancy pants part of your resume because it's going to determine if an employer wants to keep reading through the rest of your resume. You shouldn't put the best stuff at the bottom. They might never get there. So I would recommend contact info, first place they're going to look, and then your skills. They want to see if you have the skills needed for that job. So things for you to think about in this section. What skills do you bring to the table? What are your power words? What are those words that really stand out and make you who you are? And why are you the best candidate? Here's the trick. Link to the job description. If you know this company well, what skills do you think their employees are using? Those are the skills that you can include in your skills section. Also, if they've posted a job posting, maybe you found it on Indeed, maybe you found it online somewhere, you can actually pull some of the skills out of that job description and plug them right into your resume. So you might be thinking, Kerry, I don't have any skills. You absolutely have skills. Think about this: Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Google Apps, platforms, Adobe, if you know any of the Adobe suite, Mac operating systems. I know most of you know social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Yes, those are important. The reason I can't tell you how many employers I have that are asking for students who know how to use TikTok because their business is requiring it and they don't know how to use it. So they're looking for students who know how to use these platforms to help them build their business. If you know camera equipment like DSLR cameras, if video equipment is something that you really love. Also, think about what you've had to do in transitioning to remote learning. You know how to use Zoom. You know how to use Google Hangouts. All of those can be included in your skill section on your resume. So start thinking of some of these hard skills and accompany them with what we call soft skills. Those are more of your communication skills, and maybe you're a good listener and a hard worker. So you're going to want to put both hard skills, those are tech, and soft skills, your personality, together in this section. Here are the words that I don't want you to use. My space sloth doesn't like these. I'll let you take a peek at them. Why do I not like these words? Well, I kind of call them floaty words. They just float. They don't really mean anything. For example, I could be a results-driven and self-motivated youth soccer coach with a great track record. I could also be a results-driven and self-motivated CEO of Amazon with a great track record. They don't tell me anything about you. Whereas if we look back at these skills, they tell me actually what you know how to do in relation to the job. Now, these are okay in scattered amounts on your resume. What I don't want to see is them all chunked together right in that top skill section. They're actually the most commonly used words on LinkedIn, which is a networking website. So they don't really have any meaning. They're just kind of floaty because so many people use them. All right, so we are going to now talk about education section. So remember, it's going to go contact info, then your skills, and then while you are a student, your education goes first. Once you become an employee, you flip them around and work goes above education. But for now, all of you will have education first. You'll say Burlington High School, Burlington, Vermont, anticipated graduation whenever that might be. You do not need to put the length of the time that you have been there. So what I mean by that is you don't need to say September 2016 to present, just when you're going to graduate. The reason is because often too many numbers can make an employer start to do math, and then they don't remember who you are or what they're actually reading. They're figuring out, were they there 4 years? Were they there 3 years? You just need to tell them when you're going to much. What if you go to a tech school? If you go to CTE or BTC, absolutely they should be on there. It would look like this: Burlington High School, Burlington, Vermont, anticipated graduation, May 2020. And then you would say Burlington Technical Center, the program that you are in, and then your graduation right below that. So they're actually two separate schools because you do go to two separate schools. So make sure you include that, especially if you go to a tech program. What about your GPA? Do you include it? This is your call. If it's a GPA that you are really proud of and that you worked your booty off for, absolutely put it on there. If it's something that you're not so proud of or you're working on, you can leave it off. Maybe you are on honor roll, or maybe you are on high honors, 1 or 2 semesters, and then maybe not all the rest. You can list the semesters that you were on those honor rolls. Then, this is probably the most important section, because sometimes as teens we don't have a ton of work experience yet. That's totally okay. What employers are going to want to see is some of your coursework that you've done that's a higher level coursework, potentially related to the job that you're applying to. Now, if you're applying for a retail position on Church Street, is a lot of your coursework going to align? Maybe, maybe not. But higher level courses that you've taken that you're really proud of would go in here. I gave the example of Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology. Maybe this is a course that you've taken while you're in high school, and maybe you're in it right now. And then you're going to create what we call action statements. Now, this is the trickiest part of a resume. Your action statements are those little bulleted sentences that you see after an experience that you've had. Now, if we take a peek at these, remember, they have no I's, you's, he, she's, it's in it. They're completely personless. What kind of word do they all start with? I'm going to make you think back to your last English class. What kind of word? If you thought of verb, you're right. They all start with verbs. They're action statements. They start with an action word. So you discovered and explored. You dissected. You explored. You wrote. These are all words that explain to someone what you did in that role. So you discovered and explored all major systems of the human body, including circulatory systems, lymphatic systems, etc., etc. So this is where you tell someone what you did. I would try to shoot for 2, maybe 3 action statements per course you've taken. Maybe highlight 3 of your top courses. Now, if you've had 5 jobs and you're like, Kerry, I can't fit my courses onto my resume, totally fine. But if you're someone who's maybe not had a ton of work experience yet, coursework is a great way to show an employer that you have the skills and the knowledge for the job that you're applying to. And then last but not least, courses and clubs. Absolutely. If you are a member of a club, if you are a president of a club, if you're on an athletic team, all of those should be in your education section. And you would just bullet them almost just like this. So if these pieces of content were clubs that I was in or achievements that I had, awards that I've won, that would all go right in here. Then you would build your relevant coursework as your next section. All right. And if you have had some work experience, this is where you would build out your work section. We do something called reverse chronological order. So what that means is your most recent job goes first. Your oldest job goes at the end. So you go most recent all the way down to the oldest position at the bottom. This is where you're going to include job title, business, location, and dates. Job title, business, location, and dates. All 4 of those pieces need to be within each work experience that you have. And I'm going to show you an example in a minute. Then you create these action statements that we just talked about. Action and result. What I want to see is a verb followed by what you did. If you can, make them quantifiable. And short jobs, yes, if you just worked over the summer, if maybe you had a babysitting job for a couple of weeks, fantastic. And if you've had an internship, of course you should put that on there. So here's an example. Maybe you were a crew member at McDonald's. You've been there for 4 years. So remember, we have our position title, our business, our location, and our dates. then here are our nice, fancy, clean action statements. They're going to explain what you did. You maintained a clean work environment. You developed interpersonal skills. You provided, ensured. This is also a great place if words don't come easy to you. That's me, actually. I'm a numbers person. I'm not a words person. Find a friend or a trusted adult who is a words person and have them help you write some of these statements. That's totally fine to do. They can be really tricky. And once you get the rhythm of it, it can be a lot easier. But don't get discouraged. It can be hard to write these action statements. We had a really great question come in about clubs. So I'm going to circle back to that in a second. Hang tight. So make sure your action statements, if you can, really explain what your responsibilities were in that position, what you had to maintain, what you had to do. If you have questions about these, remember, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to be one of your resources now too. Okay, but here's a question I often get asked. What counts as a job and what doesn't count as a job? So we're building out this job section, but what counts and what doesn't? Things that don't count as a job. Volunteer opportunities, because they will have their own section called volunteer opportunities. Also, school clubs and athletic teams, those would go in their own section. So we can visit our club question now. If you are in like maybe one, maybe two clubs, you could put that in your education section. But if you've had a lot of club experience and it's something that you're really, really passionate about, maybe a couple of sports that you've played throughout your years, maybe you've been in one or two or three clubs, you can build a clubs and activities section. I think that's a really great title for it to show everything that you've done. Now, if your club, this is the question that we got asked, if your club has nothing to do with the job that you're applying to, yes, you should absolutely include it. The reason, there are so many skills tucked into that club experience. Maybe it's leadership, maybe it's teamwork and collaboration, maybe it's listening, maybe it's helping people. All of those aspects are going to be really, really important for an employer. Remember, we talked about those soft skills. Here are all the soft skills that an employer is going to want to see. So yes, even if that club or experience has nothing to do with the job, you should absolutely include it. Employers love to see that students are involved. And actually, colleges do too. So it's very important to include everything that you've done in your resume. So we know what doesn't count as a job. But what does count as a job? Babysitting, absolutely, even if it was for family members. Maybe your aunt, maybe your cousin, that can totally, totally count. Let me get rid of those. House sitting, pet sitting, plant sitting. If someone asked you to watch and water their plants for a couple of weeks while they were on vacation, totally counts as a job. Mentoring, maybe you had a little buddy at some organization that you worked with. Tutoring, whether formal or informal, that can count. Lifeguarding, working in a restaurant, working in retail, landscaping, if you ever mowed lawns or maybe you gardened for someone, those can all count. Now, maybe you help your grandma with her gardening because maybe she's a little bit older and needs some help and you really like spending time with her. I would put that in a volunteer opportunity. Now, if you worked for a company and did some gardening, that would count as a job. Remember, there's a very fine line with all these. You can always ask an adult for help to kind of figure out which section it might go in or might fit in best. Volunteer opportunities, yes, they should absolutely, absolutely be included on your resume, even if they were required for school. What I mean by combine or leave separate is, do they go into the employment section or should they be in their own section? I would put them in their own section, even if it's just one or two. You would format them the same way as the job section, which means employer name, position title, location, and dates. And then you would have one or two action statements to go with them to explain what you did in that role. And if you've done an impressive amount of hours, maybe you were required to do 10 throughout the year and you ended up doing 100, I would absolutely include that to show someone that you went above and beyond. I know if you're a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout, if you're going for your Gold Award or your Eagle Scout, then your hours are absolutely going to be impressive. So make sure you include those as well. Here we go, beefing it up. If you've built out these sections, your education, your employment, your volunteer work, and your selected classes, and you're like, Kerry, I'm still only at a half a page. What can I add to this? Here are some suggestions. Remember, always build out that classwork. You could put in some project work. Maybe you did a course after school. Maybe you did a course over the summer. Maybe you did a course at the end of the school year. All of that can go right in there. Leadership opportunities, like we mentioned at the beginning. If you're the president of a club, if you're the VP of a club, maybe you were a captain of a sports team or an assistant captain, maybe you were a manager of a sports team, maybe you were just asked to be the leader of a certain group. That can absolutely be a leadership opportunity, whether formal or informal. Maybe you're a mentor to a younger student. That can count as a leadership opportunity. Awards and honors, if you were ever selected for an award, if you were ever nominated for an award, even honors. So anything that you have been recognized for, even if it was just a nomination, you didn't have to win to put it on your resume. Certifications, maybe you're a certified lifeguard. Maybe you got certified as a safe sitter. Those can all go in your certification section. Now, professional affiliations, this one is a bit more advanced. So this is what I would recommend some of my college students be a part of. But you might also have a professional affiliation with some sort of creative organization or a sports organization if it's something formal and professional. That doesn't mean I follow a group on Facebook who loves the Red Sox. It would be something official and formal. And what about references? Do your references go on a resume? What are references? First of all, so references are a list of people, usually previous employers, teachers, guidance counselors, mentors, who can vouch for your skills. So they can say, yes, Joe Schmo was excellent, showed up to class on time, turned in all of his work on time, was an excellent candidate, and I really recommend him for this job. Most employers are going to ask for 1 or 2, maybe 3 references just to make sure that you're the person that you're presenting on your resume. Do they go on your resume though? The answer is no. References are a completely separate piece of paper. So we're not even going to venture into it, but there's something called a cover letter. Cover letter goes on top, then your resume, and then your references. My guess is, though, most employers that you might be applying to for summer jobs are going to ask for a resume and maybe references. So what that would look like is a resume, and then you would have another piece of paper that has those names and contact information of the people who could vouch for you and say that you're a good human, a great work ethic, maybe you've worked with them before. Basically, they know your skill sets and that you're a good candidate for the role. All right, and then here's something that I love because I love organizing resumes. Consistency. What I really want to make sure in a resume is that all of your verb tenses are the same. We're going to get a little bit into school lingo here. Verb tenses, that means that one doesn't say I direct, and then you say directed in the next sentence. You're going to want all of your tenses to be present or all of your tenses to be past. Now, I would recommend all of your tenses to be past. So, directed, helped, assisted, learned, taught, past tense for all of your verbs. Formatting. So that means one of your bullets isn't size 12 and the next bullet is size 14. Make sure all of your formatting is consistent. Your schools are consistent. So if you go to, say, Burlington High School and Burlington Technical Center, you've listed them in the same way. Your degrees, keep that in a college level, but that would also mean the dates that you're going to school, any classes that you've taken, your headings and punctuation are all the same. So if you have a period at the end of all of your bullets, you make sure every bullet has the end with a period. So keep consistent throughout your whole resume. Ooh. And if you are still lost, there's a nice old TV reference right there. You can Google it. You can always ask someone that you trust at the school or the library to help take a little peek at this, to make sure that all of your pieces are put together in the right way. You can also, sneak peek, go on Champlain College's website, and we have lots of templates for you to use that are totally open to the public. So you're more than welcome to. And if you need help getting directed to those, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to show you where they all live. But they download as nice Word docs, and you can just plug and chug something that might sound interesting to you. If you're interested in business, maybe you're interested in retail work, we have resumes that you can snag for all of those, just to get inspired and get the writing juices going. And last but not least, here is my contact information. That's me rowing a giant pumpkin. If any of you remember the giant pumpkin regatta way, way back, that is me in an 1,000-pound pumpkin down on the Burlington waterfront. But more importantly, my email is right there on the screen. You're always welcome to reach out. I'm happy to connect you with students who are in your field of interest, or if you just need someone to take a peek at your resume, we're always happy to help with that. I'm also really happy to answer any questions that you might have about Champlain if it's something that has interested you. I know our digital forensics and cybersecurity programs and our game programs are really popular among students. So if you have any questions about what college life is like, or want to talk to a student who might be in one of those programs, I'm also really happy to connect you with them. So there's your quick and speedy process on how to write a resume. Biggest thing to take away from this: breathe, start with a nice clean document, and just work your way through step by step by step. I would recommend taking this video and just pausing it. Work on your contact information, work on your skills, work on your education, work on all the rest. Take it step by step by step, and don't get overwhelmed. And remember, your resume is constantly updating and editing and changing. I update mine almost monthly. I'm sure every adult updates theirs whenever they need to. So whatever you create will not be the end-all be-all. Just take a stab at it, take a start, and see what you can create. I'm excited for you. Good luck. Keep me posted. And I'm excited to see what kinds of resumes you all build.
Thanks so much, Kerry. Really appreciate having you. That was awesome. And Kerry's right. If you have any questions, you can definitely contact her or reach out to me at the library. So thanks for tuning in.